To be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a rage almost all the time. I am not James Baldwin, but I have played him on stage a few times. My name is Norman G. I am an actor, director, teaching artist, and the founder of the Oakland Public Theater. OPT is developing a piece for Baldwin's 100th birthday next year. Now, how do you mark the occasion of his centennial? James Arthur Baldwin was born in Harlem on August 2nd, 1924, an American author and critic. He was a chief chronicler of the civil rights movement of the 1960s. That's a really boring, objective description of a man whose prophetic observations continue to reverberate and remain relevant to the issues of our day. So maybe instead we want to start with his own words. Not everything that is faced is changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Most of us are about as eager to change as we were to be born, and go through our changes in a similar state of shock. You've got to tell the world how to treat you. If the world tells you how you are going to be treated, you are in trouble. The place in which I'll fit will not exist until I create it. I'm not sure how far Jimmy got with that endeavor, but it is one of his many aspects we will explore in the coming months, starting at his birthday later this year. OPT is developing a new piece inspired in part by a local playwright, Richard Talavera, and the wonderful San Francisco company Word for Word, who draw all of their projects directly from literature. Full disclosure, I'll be performing in France with them this spring. But it is strange to have a playwright tell you, I don't want to write a single word. And that's what Richard Talavera did a few years ago when we did the Richard Wright Centennial Project, pulling from literature, interviews, biographies, and in that same way we hope to bring a richer sense of Baldwin to life. But how will that work? Well, let me use brief excerpts from Notes of a Native Son to illustrate. These quotes are currently making the rounds online for some reason. So imagine a cop over here, white, and a black one over here, and a black youth passing between them. There were, incidentally, according to my brother, 5 Negro policemen in Atlanta at this time who, though they were not allowed to arrest whites, would, of course, be willing, indeed, in that position, anxious to arrest any Negro who seemed to need it. In Harlem, Negro policemen are feared more than whites, for they have more to prove and fewer ways to prove it. If you just must call a policeman, for we hardly ever did, for God's sake, try to make sure it's a white one. A black policeman could completely demolish you. He knew far more about you than a white policeman could, and you were without defense before this black brother in uniform, whose entire reason for breathing seemed to be his hope to offer proof that, though he was black, he was not black like you. I hope our audiences will easily imagine that youth having to ping pong across the stage between these two threatening forces until the cops finally unite and exit, leaving our black youth fearful yet unscathed in those unfortunately simpler yet similar times. At the height of his notoriety, James Baldwin seemed to be everywhere in magazines, at marches and protests, on talk shows, college campuses, and even local high schools here in the Bay Area as well as across the country. More than just an activist, he was a novelist, a poet, a playwright. His work is currently having a resurgence, Last year's film, If Beale Street Could Talk, is just one recent example. Yet up to his death in his beloved France in 1987, he remained a social observer and commentator. Shortly before then, when asked why everything had to be about race, he replied politely, "What is it you want me to resign myself to? I was born here almost 60 years ago. I'm not going to live another 60 years. You always told me it takes time. It has taken my father's time, my mother's time, my uncle's time, my brothers and my sisters' time, my nieces and my nephews' time. How much time do you want for your progress?" And yet, until the end, Baldwin never gave up hope. We are responsible for the world in which we find ourselves, if only because we are the only sentient force which can change it. I am what time, circumstance, history have made me, certainly, but I am also much more than that. So are we all. I hope you'll come and join me on my adventure, getting to know James Baldwin. BaldwinCentennialProject.com